All right, at 1:02, I am calling the third day of our budget hearings to order. And it is, what's the date? It is April 14th, 2022. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councillor Villarreal.
Present.
Councillor Rivera.
Here.
Councillor Cassett.
She's excused.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Lindell.
Here.
Councillor Romero Worth.
I am here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we're going to go to approval of the agenda. Yesterday, we postponed the community engagement budget until today. I would like to entertain a motion to move it to next week sometime. We have not had the information that we need, that the committee requested. And we also, I have learned, have a hard stop at 4 because of other city committees that the council members are on this committee are involved in. So if we could get a motion to move that community engagement budget to next week, then we can improve the agenda as it's presented here.
So moved, Chair.
Is there a second? I'll second. Is there discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
I'm sorry, what was the reasoning given for not having, because I thought they said that they had based some of the issues that we raised on information that they already had.
They did, but they wanted to, I think it's just raw data, and they were putting it together in a memo to share. And, we had the council meeting last night, and then the graduation this morning. And I think it's just, we have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So I think it would be better if we take the time we need, and I think we can get that memo, by later today or tomorrow, so that we'll have it and be able to look at it.
So is the intention to move it to Tuesday or to I'll call it, for lack of better, the parking lot on our last day?
Yeah, I'd prefer not to put it to the parking lot. I'd love to see if we can find space to do it in the, sometime in the next 3 meetings. And if we could if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to leave it a little bit flexible. I mean, we'll take it up either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'm guessing, I think Tuesday's schedule is going to be pretty heavy. Might be able to fit it in Wednesday. I don't think there's many committees meetings next week either, so we might be able to go over a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Other discussion on moving that to next week? Yes, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to suggest also, or make sure that when we're following the schedule for next week, that those departments that are already scheduled, that this makeup session goes after their scheduled event or
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions? All right, can we get a roll call on moving community engagement to next week?
Councillor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Cassett. Oh, she's excused. Sorry. Councillor Lynn.
Yes.
And Councillor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so then the agenda that we have in front of us today is, as is in PrimeGov, to hear the municipal court, ITT, human resources, and finance And in that order, if we could get a motion to approve this agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion on approval of the agenda? If not, can we get a roll call?
Let's try this. Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes. Okay, so we are now on to our first budget of the day, the municipal court, and we have Judge V. Hill with us. And I believe we're just going to hand it over to you. Oh, well, I'll have the judge introduce her team that's joining.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have my champions to the left and to the right, though I can't see them right now, but Jackie Baca, who's been working very closely with finance on this budget. And to the other side of me is Chad Chittum, court administrator, also pro tem judge here. We're both here available to answer any of the questions that you might have. There is a difference in our requests from pre-COVID times. You probably are able to tell that there is an increase of $475,000. And I think highlighted in that are a couple of budget items that we gave up on, and that was the DUI drug court and streamlining the treatment component to that. Most of the DUI drug court folks right now are getting their own treatment and doing all the other requirements of their judgment and sentence. However, there are some who do not have insurance, who others only speak Spanish. It's been difficult to get the treatment component in there since we lost the opportunity to streamline through a single source provider for that. So we included the $70,000 that wasn't there in the previous year to work with that, to try to get that piece into the DUI drug court. It's a critical piece of it. Also, the $100,000 for landscaping is something that I hope you all received the article that was in the Reporter when I first came on board and how they talked about our landscape facility. I have been trying to get this court landscape since I got here. There's another photo I think that we sent to you all. I hope you all received it. There's a healing garden that's supposed to be occurring in the front of the courthouse, and that hasn't been utilized at all. We're trying to really improve the landscaping so that people who come to court don't feel they're coming only for a punitive, but for a purpose of actually rehabilitation, which is a huge component that has to be addressed in every possible way in all of our court systems and our detention facilities for that matter. But those are the only two increases, unless Ms. Baca, do you have anything to offer with regard to other increases?
So the other items that were listed or highlighted have actually been included in our budget in previous years. For instance, the AOC, those are collected through fines and fees that we receive, and they are passed on monthly to the AOC, along with the home detention, which has been part of our program at municipal court for some years. The addition of the $20,400 includes interpreting, and it also includes a contract with Westlaw for legal information.
Okay, so really the only additional increases that we're asking for, and the 70,000 we had before, we just gave it up when we had to reduce our budget, and we couldn't provide that kind of a service during COVID. The only other additional one would be the landscaping. The rest remains the same. and let me put that another way. All the other services that we budgeted for have always been part of municipal courts. So we stand for questions unless.
Okay. If we could stop sharing the screen, that would be helpful. And we can go to questions from the committee. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make this quick. Thank you all. Thank you, Judge Vigil, Jackie, and Chad for joining us today and for your quick presentation. I just had to follow up question. Thank you for some of the clarification on the DUI court funding and the interpretation services. That 20,000 for interpretation, was that specifically just for the Westlaw legal interpretation needs, or were there other contracts?
So 10,000 was for Westlaw, and the other remaining amount is for additional monies for interpretations.
Got
Or-
it.
I'm sorry.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I know you already have the home detention monitoring, and the 20,000 covers what aspect of that program?
Actually, what it's specific for is for the electronic monitors, which is better known as an ankle bracelet. That is an alternative to detention that we've been incorporating for quite some time now. So those are for DUI offenders or other serious offenses that come through the court, and that monitoring must occur.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had was, it said funding for 8% salary increase for exempt employees. So do you all not have union employees? You just have exempt?
We're all exempt.
Got it. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Very well.
Other questions from the committee? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to approve.
Okay.
I'd like to hear.
Was that a second? I'm not sure. So we have a motion and we have a second from Councilor Rivera, correct?
Yes.
To approve this budget. Thank you. If we could get a roll call.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. That budget passes. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Ms. Baca, for joining us. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
We are now on to the Information Technology and Telecommunications Department budget, and we have Manuel Gonzalez with us. And Manuel, you may have other members of your team. I will let you introduce them and take it away.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and City Councilors. With me today from Administrative Operations, I have IT Procurement Coordinator David Tapia. David?
Director, can I just hold on a minute?
Yes.
There's somebody who's very zealous in putting up the presentation. If we could just take that down for a minute while we introduce the team, and then we'll go to that. So sorry, you guys are too on it.
So actually, can we go to the first slide of the presentation? Actually,
Well,
I'll go ahead and introduce.
I wanted you to introduce your team and for us to be able to see them.
Yeah, I would like you to, so you know who we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
from
great.
Administrative Operations, I have IT Procurement Coordinator David Tapia. David currently does 3 jobs for IT Procurement Coordinator, Contracts Administrator, and Financial Analyst. From Infrastructure Services, NetOps Manager Larry Worstel. Network Operations currently supports 2 data centers, 45 facilities, over 4,000 devices, 2 radio systems, 1,400 radios, and 3 radio towers. From End User Services, I have EUS Manager EJ Duran. EUS currently supports 2,000 devices, over 1,500 users. From Enterprise Application Services, I have Steven Santiesteban. There's currently over 100 applications that are housed in EAS. From Project Management Office, I have the Project Manager, Office Manager, Audrey Abeta. The PMO is currently working on 20 projects and has 61 projects proposed to them right now. So those are the services we provide. I think that's on the second slide. So we could, thank you, team, for joining us. We'll refer to them if we have any questions if needed.
Great. So now we can go to the PowerPoint. Thank you.
So I went over our 3 divisions right there and their managers and their services they provided. The next item on this slide is positions. Last year's FY22 position count was 43. Our recommended count is 44. ITT's commitment to the Finance Committee at this time last year was that we would provide a career path for the City of Santa Fe employees. Since that time, we've filled 10 positions. 8 of those have been city employees, 3 of them internal to IT, and 5 of them from other departments. So we're really proud of that. From that time, also, we've gone from 1 female in IT to 5. So that's something we're also really proud of. Not only are we addressing issues that should have been addressed 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we are changing the environment here at IT. Next slide, please. A highlighted bullet here is a $2 million transfer. That $2 million is for the Tyler upgrade. And it'll come up in a later slide that we could discuss further. $273,000 is for legacy support for a server farm. This is historical data that we're moving off of, that we're getting into a cloud or new servers. We still have to keep that server farm operational. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll find the bottom line budget for the administration division. Next slide, please. This is the telecommunication. Actually, this is EUS. So the only bullet highlighted here is a position that's moving over from fire to IT. This is a sysadmin fire position. This provides system administrative support for fire. ITT has been doing this service for fire for at least 10 years now. It's a single point of failure. By getting this position, we're going to be able to provide team support and no longer have that single point of failure. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll find the bottom line budget for EUS. Next slide. This is telecommunication and end user services. This is what we call a net ops. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. This is what we call net ops. So there's 2.3 million. I'm sorry, I'm on the. This is application services. I'm sorry. So what's been identified here is 2.3 million for software applications. What this is for example, Microsoft subscription, Adobe, the various applications we use citywide. One item that's increasing is our Kronos platform. That's going to increase by 128,000. What we're going to do is we're going to upgrade from Kronos Workforce Central to Kronos Dimensions. What this allows us to do is finally bring over Santa Fe Fire and Santa Fe PD into the Kronos application and get them off manual entry. What this also will accomplish will allow us to have the Kronos platform communicate with the Munis platform and get away from manual entries done by payroll. Next slide, please. Here you'll find the bottom line budget for enterprise application services. Telecommunication Department Infrastructure Services. This is what we call NetOps. You'll see a bullet here, $2 million. That's for the entire network infrastructure. So that's an entire communications. It's not just mobile phones. 2.5 million data processing. That's for all the hardware that we provide for the city of Santa Fe. Next slide, please. On this page, you'll find the bottom line budget for the net ops, which is the network infrastructure team. Next slide. The newly stood up project management office. And here's where we'll talk. There was $2 million mentioned earlier in a transfer. And that's where the 2 million shows up here. It's actually $2.4 million for the Tyler upgrade. Now, what that's going to be used for is to upgrade our FedMunis platform and our HCM platform. We're 10 generations behind right now. The current version is sunsetting at the end of the calendar year. So what we're going to do is bring an implementation team to be the lead on the Munis upgrade. We also have contract services for daily operations and payroll, and technical support in payroll, and daily operation support in FedMunis. Next slide, please. On this slide, where did we go? Okay. You'll find the bottom line budget for the project management office on this slide. Next slide, please. Can you go to slide 15, please? So ITT's budget request is $19,764,207. That's an increase of 6.4%. Thank you for your time. At this time, we stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
I always have questions, right?
We knew you would.
Good.
Well, more so clarification, just to elaborate on some of the bullet points that were already provided in the budget book, so we can have a better awareness. So thank you for the presentation, Director Gonzalez, and to see all your team on the screen. Just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about the, let's see, what was listed was the multi-factor authentication. It was 185,000. If you could tell us a little bit more or say more about that.
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we're strengthening our cybersecurity stance. And in order to do that, we got to have every user implement multi-factor authentication. So we have to buy fobs. So most of that cost is for the fob. So we're going to have to provide every city employee with a fob. So most of that is for the hardware.
Fob, is that
it's a little device. You'll enter a PIN number. It'll give you a PIN, and that authenticates you are who you say you are. So you'll have to enter that when you enter your password onto your system.
Got it. Thank you. So the increase that we had already approved last, like mid-year budget, I thought it was for data processing. Maybe it wasn't for that. I was trying to remember what we approved recently, and then there's an additional amount that you're requesting.
So that Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that was for the cybersecurity infrastructure.
Okay.
We've had issues with cybersecurity. The threat has risen due to world events. So we have to strengthen our cybersecurity, and that's what that was for.
Okay, and there wasn't additional money in this budget for that?
So if you could bring that line item so we could look at that, or let me know where it's at.
Don't know. I thought I saw it.
Okay,
I wrote it down, but
so we have to implement this new service, and then after that we have to pay a yearly fee for this service. So it's a software application.
okay, maybe that's what it was, software specific. So that the software piece wasn't included in the budget last budget cycle?
The software implementation and the 2 new FTEs, because we requested 2 new FTEs for the cybersecurity team. But after that, we have to pay an annual fee for the application.
Got it. Okay. So just curious, do you all have a plan in place for the computer refresh initiative replacement? Is there something you have in place so that when you start doing the replacements, you already know what needs to be switched out, or like, is there a plan? I guess I'm just curious. Do you have to put a plan in place in order to make this occur?
We have a plan that we already implemented, Councilor Villarreal. So
Okay.
I think just within the past 3 months, we replaced 60 computers. Our recycle rate is we have to replace a computer every 5 years. So currently right now we have 300 computer systems out there that need to be replaced. And it's just a cycle. Every 5 years, we got to replace that system.
Right. And then the other question I had to do with just the budget that was in our budget book, the overall summary, I believe. Yeah, it's the expenditure summary. There's a line item by category. It says repairs and maintenance. And I was just looking through the different iterations of years of expenditures. And then the proposed budget for this year is a hefty increase, but can you remind us what that's for? It's like a 353% increase, but I know there was a reason for it. I was trying to remember what the repairs and maintenance piece, what you all are requesting and why it jumped up for the proposed budget.
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I'm going to ask David Tapia to identify what item you're talking about, and then I'll be able to answer that
Yeah, it's
question.
on page 79, or at least in the budget book, the hard copy budget book.
Council Real, I believe that was for the police department request for a vehicle uplift.
Okay, so thank you, David. So yes, we're in charge of outfitting the police units. Santa Fe PD is getting new units, so we have to cover radios, communication devices, laptops, lights, decals. We have to outfit that unit. So that's what that increase is.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. I do have questions later, but this relates to HR and finance and how they fit into the Tyler system upgrade. So maybe Manuel, you could stick around just in case, so we have clear understanding of their requests versus what you all are requesting. But I'll wait to get to that point.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, yes, I'll be able to assist HR and finance on any questions.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, other questions from the committee? Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Manuel, first on the install of the PD vehicles, you said you were doing radios, lights, everything. Is it the radio shop that's doing that?
Well, we pay, apologize, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we pay for that, but we don't outfit it completely. That is outsourced.
Okay.
But with the laptops and the radios, we do some of that installation. Yes, the radio shop does do that. But there's certain things that we do outsource.
So that was my question, since most of the vehicles now that we're looking at are going to be a hybrid type model, are you guys equipped to do that adequately, or should that be done? Should that be outsourced as well, since these are a new type, a new style of vehicle?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we're equipped to handle any tasks or deliverables assigned to us on building out the units.
Okay, thank you. And then you have 719,000 for repair and maintenance of MDT for police vehicles. Those are for the existing units.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I'm going to include EJ on this to identify that item, and then I can answer that question.
Councilor Rivera, Madam Chair, of that 719,000, only 557 is for the mobile data terminal maintenance. With that, we are currently covering 206,000 of that is for 30 police vehicles, and 170 of that 1,000 within that 719 is for the cradle points and antennas. So that the other piece for the repairs and maintenance is for operational costs, for tower costs, generators, AC work, stuff like that for the prime sites.
Okay, but it's all related basically to
Yes.
the
For public
computers.
safety, sir.
in
Yes.
the vehicle. Okay.
Thank you, EJ.
Thanks, EJ. I think I had another question, but I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, that was it. In your line item detail, you have services to other departments. The proposed budget is 13 million. How does that work? Do you provide the services to other departments and they reimburse your department back? And I don't know if this is really for you or maybe Miss McCoy. How
So,
the services to other departments work.
so Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes. So, and Andy could help us with this also. So, when there is a request that is usually transferred a bar from other departments, but we what we did was we took a percent. We met with the departments. We identified what their needs was for next fiscal year, and that we put that in our budget this year. Is that correct, Andy?
You are correct, sir. Yes.
All right. So in that process, if let's say Parks requests 20 new computers and it's been budgeted, then that comes out of that 13 million and not out of the Parks budget?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, that's correct.
Okay. I think that was all I had. Did Andy want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, those charges do show up in the IT budget, but Parks will, for example, in the example you said, Parks would end up paying for them through their services of other departments charge. It is the purchase is maintained and the equipment maintained by IT to ensure that all equipment and software purchase is compatible with city systems, and they manage the contracts to ensure that they're done in the most efficient and effective way possible. But the costs for the hardware acquisition, the software charges, communications charges, all of that do end up getting charged back to the user departments, be it parks or transit or police, through the services of other departments charge.
All right. So, and maybe Mr. Gonzalez wasn't clear, maybe I didn't hear correctly, but I heard that departments, certain percentage of departments' budgets were pulled into this 13 million, and then their needs, whatever they were, computers, hardware, software, would then be purchased out of this amount.
Madam Chair, go ahead, Mary. I'm sorry.
I will just try to address this for all departments, since this has come up in prior years' budget hearings as well. In the services to other departments cost, and Andy can go into the details, there are, maybe I should actually take one step back. We have about 70 different funds in our chart of accounts. And so some of those are enterprise funds, like we saw on the first day, true enterprise funds like water or wastewater, that where the revenue into those funds is supported by fees for service. There are other funds like the Chavez Center in the Recreation Department that does support, they're not considered true enterprise funds. They have a significant portion of their budget is covered by the fees for service that they do charge, but then that can fluctuate so much in any given year that there's often a support from the general fund or from a gross receipts tax. So that being said, in an attempt, I think the key word that Andy used was a chargeback. In an attempt the city made an attempt a few years ago to centralize a lot of the IT functions within the IT department to ensure that we're getting the best cost, to make sure that they have oversight in the types of operating systems, enterprise systems that the city is using, because they're really the IT experts. And so in order to facilitate this process, we do centralize the budget within the IT department to purchase or to be able to oversee the upfit for the vehicles, like we were discussing earlier. However, those costs, because we would like to assign the costs, for example, to the utilities funds, that's the process that Andy is describing, where he then takes the list that Manuel and his team have, Director Gonzalez and his team have reviewed from each of the departments, and then assigns those costs through a chargeback process, charges the original funds directly. So then the water enterprise fund is being expensed for its share of new computer equipment or its share of a particular type of software that they are planning to use. So through that chargeback process, which we term services to other departments, we are allowed to be able to hit the right funding source, an enterprise fund, or in this case, the Chavez Center Fund, in the example that we're using, for the laptops or the computers. But the oversight and the management of that purchase is conducted by Director Gonzalez and his team.
Okay. All right. I've probably asked that question for the last 10 years, and that's probably the best answer I've gotten. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions from the committee? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. We have the mayor's hand up. Mayor, did you want to say something about this budget?
Well, I thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to delay the work of the committee, but one of the things that I've observed from the committee meetings that have started so far is that they're not only about the budget, they're about the work that the departments do. And it's an opportunity for department heads to do a little bit of, I don't want to say self-promotion, but because they're very modest people, but highlighting the critical issues they're dealing with. And I don't want to get in your way, but I thought if the director wanted to give you a quick tour of the journey that he has taken IT on, it's quite a remarkable professionalization upgrade process from what he inherited to where we are now. We're not anywhere close to where we need to be. The number of machines that need to be replaced, the software that has to be corralled and homogenized so that we're not spread out across the horizon with everybody having their own software package, the efforts to make sure we're not hacked by outside organizations, disaster recovery, issues of licensing. I think they deserve, in my book, excuse me for the presumption, but it would be great if you could give the director at least a quick 5 minutes to give himself and his team a little bit of credit for the quite extensive journey that they've taken us on. And with the work to be done still, the increases in IT that represent a significant improvement on our modernization and professionalization efforts. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Director Gonzalez, if you'd like to take a few minutes, the mayor's just put you on the hot seat, and I do think it's important work to bring us up to the century we're living in, which is very heavily technology based, and we were behind, and we have been making strides to catch up. So I think it is really important to the, as the mayor said, the professionalization, modernization of city government, and you're really at the core of all that.
Madam Chair, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for. First of all, this is a team effort. This is not me. I mean, I can't do what EJ Duran does, what Audrey Abeta does, what Nathan Salazar, what Phil Montano do. They're the ones on the field. They're the ones that are making the plays. I'm just the guy on the sideline. I'm just the coach with a big panza that's calling the dumb plays. All I do is provide the framework. They're the ones that are talented. They're the ones that are getting the job done. So all this credit goes to them. They're an amazing team, extremely talented, dedicated, hardworking. professional. And so they've done a great job, and we did inherit a mess. You know, Director Salazar and Director McCoy, you know, go crazy with me because I tell them the Munis upgrade is number 5 on the priority list. It should be number 1. In a normal environment, it would be number 1. But the issues we have that we have to address, it's not. You know, we have a public safety radio system that needs to be fixed. Our cybersecurity infrastructure is not in place. Our disaster recovery plan is non-existent. We have a failing server room at City Hall that we're moving to do it. And all these things are in motion right now, and we're working on and we're looking to complete within the next year or 2. So we're excited to resolve all these problems, but you know, there's still a lot more out there. Our non-public safety radio system is legacy, outdated, and 20 years old. So we're going to have to address that once we get through the public safety radio system. You know, I think the mayor's mentioned before, we had, you know, systems from 2010. We currently have servers that are from 2003. And that's just mind blowing if you think of that. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We've accomplished a lot, and I say we because that's the team here. And it's, you know, also support from the mayor and the city manager and the governing body. You guys have given us every resource we need. Every time we ask for additional funds, you provided that for us. So we'll like to thank you guys for providing the support at the back end also.
Thank you. I think that is, and I would like, you know, as I've said, to do more presentations in the course of the year so that we better understand some of the issues that are being addressed, and maybe we'll have some opportunities to bring you back and have you give us more detail. So I appreciate that.
Madam Chair, we would love to do that. You know, our PMO office would love to start getting in front of you guys and giving you presentations. I just punted to someone else to give us presentations.
Okay, terrific. All right, we do have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, don't see anybody waving, we can take a roll call, please.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, you have a budget approved by the Finance Committee. You're on your way towards final approval.
Thank you, Madam
All
Chair.
right.
Thank you, committee.
We are on to the Human Resources Department. And we have Director Salazar with us, and with her, our members of her team. If we could just take a minute and have her introduce folks. It's always great to put a face with a name. We sometimes get emails from you all, but with COVID, we don't often see you in person. So this is a good opportunity for us all to get to know the team. And Vern, I'll let you take it away, Director Salazar.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present the FY23 requested budget. Joining us today is Ashley Barala, Assistant HR Director, Alvin Valdez, Benefits and Wellness Supervisor, Celeste Garcia, HR Analyst Senior, Sarah Bolater Gonzalez, HR Analyst, and then Todd Burley from Aon. I'd like to recognize the rest of our HR team, to include Monica Acevedo, Erin Aragon, Carmen Hancock, Lillian Maestas, Alexa Ortiz, and Carmelina Spears. I feel very grateful to be able to work on things that are so important to our employees, and I'm so very thankful to work with such a remarkable HR team. The HR team has demonstrated great compassion, agility, and a keen ability to problem solving during some of the most challenging times. The last couple of years have brought many challenges and changes to the HR profession, and I really feel that the HR team has handled these challenges with such grace. So thank you to the HR team for all your assistance. I'll begin by highlighting some of the items that helped us form the basis for our budget requests. So I'm going to start with COVID response. HR to date has processed 487 COVID cases in compliance with New Mexico regulations. This was all new to everyone, so we were learning as we went along, and with the teamwork that we had, we were able to get things done in compliance with our regulations. HR continually monitored COVID safe practices and amended our policies accordingly. We implemented the vaccination status process, if you remember, at the beginning of last summer. That included weekly testing, and that resulted in over 7,000 tests since August of 2021. We also offered 2 employees COVID safe training in collaboration with the Santa Fe Community College, and also training on steps required to process COVID cases. There was a lot of uncertainty amongst employees. If someone has a positive test, what do I do? What does it mean for my work? What does it mean for the hours? How do I document my time? So we spent a lot of time providing training and guidance to employees during these very stressful times. In an effort to support employee compensation, the HR team processed the minimum pay to $15 an hour. That resulted in approximately 120 employees receiving salary increases. In December of 2021, we implemented the retention incentives, and over 1,100 employees received this incentive. We also implemented the new hire incentives approved by the governing body, and the first one was issued in January of 2022. Of course, we also implemented this fiscal year the across the board salary increases that the governing body approved for this current fiscal year. In an effort to continue to provide growth opportunities for our employees, the HR team continued to offer leadership training to our employees in collaboration with the community college. We provided PERA retirement workshops for our employees, and of course, the several online training courses through local GovU. This year, we also implemented the Human Resources User Group, also known as the HUG group. And the purpose for this group is to have a forum for departments to provide feedback and input on HR processes and receive training on critical HR topics. And of course, all the emails that Alvin Valdez sends out, we had numerous health and wellness initiatives and challenges. So I think that was really helpful as we all continue to navigate through these challenging times. The next thing I'd like to talk about quickly is the response to the Great Resignation that has affected most organizations nationally. HR has continually made improvements to the hiring process. HR has reduced the time it takes to provide hiring departments with their list of eligible applicants once a job closes. Approximately 93% of our job postings are screened within 3 business days or less. We've posted 485 jobs as of March 31st of this year compared to last fiscal year for a total of 329. So far, as of March 31st, we've processed 3,087 job applications. And last fiscal year, for the total fiscal year, we had 2,782. So far, as of March 31st, we've hired 161 new employees compared to last fiscal year, which we hired 64. So far, we've processed 2,490 HR actions for our employee base compared to last fiscal year of 1,649. We also decided to take on our first ever rapid hiring event in December of 2021, which was a huge success, very stressful, but it was a success. We were able to offer over 30 applicants jobs to work for the city of Santa Fe. And after all the departments and the HR team recovered from that, we were back at it to try it for a second round, learning from all the things that we could have done better in December. And we hosted our second rapid hiring event in March of this year. And we focused specifically focused on public works vacant positions. After that hiring event, we offered over 20 people job offers during that hiring event. We've also partnered with the Department of Workforce Solutions, as well as the Boys and Girls Club, to help recruit for our vacant positions to include our summer youth program. The requested increases to the HR budget for FY23 continue to focus on investing in our employees. The FY23 budget highlights include funding to continue with retention and hiring incentives for our current and new employees, an allocation for the collective bargaining for AFSCME equivalent to an 8% salary increase, an increase to our benefits fund without having to make any plan design changes, which is really important to our employees. We are requesting for one new HR position to the tune of $31 an hour plus benefits. And as Councilor Villarreal mentioned, an allocation for funding to help us through the upgrade with Tyler Human Capital Management, and then a $750,000 pilot project for first responder down payment assistance. With that, I will turn it over to Todd Burley, who will go over our benefits information and the increases related to our insurance fund. And then after that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, councilors, good afternoon. If we can go to the next slide, please. Actually, a few slides.
I don't know if they have the updated presentation.
Okay, do you want me to share my screen then?
Would that be easier, Andy? Yeah.
All right, let's. Okay, everyone can see this, I hope. Yes, fantastic. So I think a lot of you have seen this presentation in various formats before, so I will go through it as quickly as I can in the interest of time. 3 sections to this presentation. First, we'll show some results through the first 9 months of this fiscal year. We'll talk about the renewal, the FY 2023 projection, and then the appendix, there are some benchmarks, which I will not cover unless there's a burning interest to do so. So first, this table shows results from July through March of 2022. So the first 9 months of this fiscal year. You can see enrollment has dropped about 5% per year for the last 2 fiscal years and 2% the year prior to that. Next important row 7, funding year to date. So that includes both the city's 76.5% share and the employees' contributions to the plan have run about 13.9 million. That's again, and we'll see shortly that funding has not increased for the last 2 fiscal years, and we'll see that on the next page. Claims have been just under 13 million year to date. Fixed costs are $1.5 million. That is the administration paid to Cigna as well as stop loss premiums. So total costs were $14.5 million relative to the 13.9 million is a $600,000 shortfall so far year to date. I expect that to grow to somewhere in the $1 million to $1.5 million range by the end of the 4th quarter. So far year to date, that's 3.4% in terms of cost over last year. And you can see the increases over the last few years right there. Here's why the shortfall is expected to increase over the next quarter. The highlighted months here are months in which there are 3 paycheck deductions. If you go out to column H, you can see in those months, there's generally about a $500,000 surplus. For the other 10 months of the year, there's typically run a deficit. As there are no other 3 paycheck months for this fiscal year, we expect to run a deficit for the following 3 months. I think there's only been 1 2 paycheck month in which the city has not run a deficit. Next up, so far year to date, there are 7 claimants who have exceeded half the stop loss level. Just as another primer on stop loss, the city has coverage at $250,000. meaning that for a claimant who exceeds $250,000 in paid claims in the fiscal year, the city pays the first $250,000 and Cigna picks up the rest. You can see in that far right-hand column, so far Cigna has paid about $400,000 in stop loss recoveries, and that will probably grow substantially in the remaining quarter. So far, 7 claimants. The next slide shows the results for the past 2 fiscal years where there have been 14 or 15 claimants. This year, I'd expect somewhere in the 10 to 12 range, and stop loss recoveries are going to greatly depend really on those first 2 claimants on their prior page. Next, I want to move into what does this all mean for fiscal year 2023. And here's a brief history. Row 1 shows year-to-date results, which we just reviewed. Again, so far a $600,000 shortfall based on 1,071 enrolled. As you may recall, the recommended increase going into this fiscal year 2022 was 11%, but due to the hardships that employees were already facing in every other aspect of their lives, it was decided not to make any changes to contributions and not to make any plan design changes either. Row column 2 shows the prior year results. Again, a recommended increase was 9.2% increase, but again, that was right at the beginning of COVID, so there was no change to contributions, but there were minimal plan design changes made, some slight copay increases, decrease to the copay for telehealth, and then some changes to the acupuncture, chiro, and naturopathic benefits. Similar in FY2020, the recommended increase was about 11%. However, in this year, contributions were increased by almost 10%, and dental premiums were increased a little over 11%. So flowing into this year, the recommended increase is 18.5% to the current medical pharmacy plan rates. We'll see the options that were presented to the Benefits Advisory Committee on the following slide. For the non-fire portion, the recommendation is to increase their rates effective July 1 of 2022 by 12% and then implement a minimum 6.5% increase for the following fiscal year. The fire union elected to take the entire increase for the upcoming fiscal year and not delay any of it. We had many meetings with the Benefit Advisory Committee over the past couple of months and received feedback and input from all members of the committee. This is a budget increase from a little less than 23 million to a little less than 26 million. The city funds 76.5% of it, so a little over 2 million. The remaining 800,000 would be deducted from employee paychecks. These estimates are based on 1,300 enrolled employees. You may have seen the city of Santa Fe has a little less than 1,100 employees currently, but to Director Salazar's point, the city expects to hire and growth in both total employees and enrolled employees. 18.5% sounds onerous, but really the city has not implemented any increases due to COVID for the past 3 years. Medical trends are about 6%, so that 18% over that 3-year period is really just medical trend over that 3-year time. Some good news, dental is appropriately funded, needs no adjustments, and all of the other benefits, vision, disability, life, et cetera, have rate guarantees through the end of fiscal year 23, so no increase necessary there either. These are the benefits that were presented to the Benefits Advisory Committee. Option 1, that's columns A and B, are what was recommended and decided as the best course of action. C and D are similar to A and B, with the exception of there was a deductible applied to the plan, and there was just not interest in that. E and F compares the city of Santa Fe's plan to the state plan, which is always just huge benefit changes, and that was decided not to be recommended either. At the bottom of this in rows 16A through D, you will see what that 18.5% or the 12 and 6.5 for column A and the flat 18 for column B would do to the deductions from employee paychecks. So for non-fire, it's an increase of anywhere from $10 to $24 per paycheck. For fire, it's an increase of about $18, anywhere up to about $42 per paycheck. Wanted to end this presentation on a high note. Senate Bill 317 eliminates member cost share for behavioral health services. What that means is for any service deemed to be behavioral health, including prescriptions for behavioral health, there will no longer be any copay or member coinsurance or any out-of-pocket costs for a member for any behavioral health costs. The good news is because of the way Cigna administers this benefit, we can implement this benefit and eliminate any member out-of-pocket costs for behavioral health with no cost to the city for the upcoming fiscal year. The remainder of this presentation is some benchmarking, which I think everyone is saying. The City of Santa Fe's plan is very generous relative to both national plans and other plans available in the state of New Mexico. I think we've all seen this before. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into any details in this other than to say that the City of Santa Fe's plan is very, very generous, both for the fire and non-fire employees. So with that, I will stop sharing and open to questions.
Okay, thank you. Let me go back to Director Salazar. Director, I didn't know if you wanted to, if you had other pieces to your presentation or whether you're ready for questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm ready for questions.
Okay. Then we'll go to questions from the committee. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we get started, if I may, I wanted to acknowledge Miss Sarah Boliter Gonzalez, who is the daughter of Ted Gonzalez. We recognized and honored her daughter last night, who was the hero that we, I think Councilor Lindell read the email that the hero that saved her little brother and a younger cousin, I believe. So congratulations to you and to her. She truly is a hero. So thank you. I hope your family's doing well. Do you want to say anything, Ms. Gonzalez? No.
Thank you.
First, with regards to the health insurance, Director Salazar, you've been having regular meetings with the unions. Have those concluded?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, for the purposes of the renewals, we have had 5 meetings, and so those meetings have concluded. However, we will continue to meet quarterly pursuant to the resolution that establishes the Benefits Advisory Committee. So we will continue with that to go over the status of the plan as Aon provides those presentations on a monthly basis.
And to date, have you and the unions, have you all come to a consensus about proposed changes?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we have had a lot of discussion reminding the committee that the purpose is to identify ways to mitigate the costs. So once we get our renewal numbers, probably about February of each year, then it's full speed ahead with the committee to figure out a way to either make plan design changes or do premium rate increases. So we had lots of discussion, lots of exchange of information. And Fire said, we want to preserve our plan. We don't want any plan design changes. So we're willing to take the 18.5% increase all in fiscal year 23. Police had some different ideas. I think there was some confusion about different plans. So the HR team did go to the police department to make sure that we were available for any questions that any union members or any employees working at the police department had. And so they were, all the people that we talked to were in alignment with nobody wants to see a rate increase, but they were happy that there wasn't any plan design changes. In talking with AFSCME, we were trying to be creative with ways on how to minimize the biweekly expenses for employees. And that's when we came up with the idea of reducing the 18.5 and spreading it over 2 years. And so they said that they would be able to handle that percentage if we spread it over 2 years with the 12% and 6.5 the following year.
And is that what's being presented in this budget today, the differences from the 3 unions about how they want to handle moving forward?
Based on the, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, based on the conversations with the Benefits Advisory Committee, yes.
Okay, so there are no plan changes to any of the 3 unions' benefits.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, there are no plan changes for fiscal year 23 that are being recommended.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was with regards to signing incentives. So those go to every employee or every new employee that we sign on, or just the ones that are difficult to fill or critical?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, they're going to every new hire as long as they sign the agreement that they're going to stay with the city of Santa Fe for at least 6 months.
Okay. And is that the same for the police department?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, the police department for certified law enforcement officers, that incentive is more. That's different than this incentive, and I believe it's at $15,000.
And that's, I assume, under the same requirement that they stay for 16 months, or is it a longer time frame?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I believe it's at least 6 months, but I will have to verify the time frame for that with the police chief.
Okay, is there a possibility it could be longer?
Yes. I think it could be, but I would like to verify.
Okay, fair enough. And then with regards to the down payment assistance program, I'm not sure how much of this you really played into it, but why not make it available to all employees versus just public safety?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I think that this was an idea for first responders to help recruit and retain employees in the first responding world. And I don't know if Mayor Weber or City Manager Blair has anything else to add.
Sure, I'm happy to. Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, thank you for that question. I think as we spoke a little bit to yesterday, is that we believe that fundamentally there is a great desire by the community to ensure we have a full police force. And we believe that incentivizing law enforcement officers to either begin their career in Santa Fe or come here as a line law officer from somewhere else, that we're taking a number of steps to try to make that manifest. One of which is by offering a larger hiring incentive, one of which is by offering these sort of mortgage assistance to try to be competitive. What we're seeing across the state right now is a lot of departments are poaching and officers moving from place to place depending on what salary they can get. We are under the impression that the state of New Mexico is also seeing a significant increase in salaries for police officers within the state police force. And so we are trying to stay competitive and trying to ensure that we have a full police force and we have the best men and women serving here at the Santa Fe Police Department. So that is a priority for us. And that's why we've chosen to put this incentive in place for those city employees.
If I can I supplement that a little bit?
Mayor,
Because we did, I think it was a very good start yesterday to talk about philosophy of compensation and incentivization of employment. I think it's safe to say that across the neighborhoods of Santa Fe and the downtown area, there's a heightened concern over all forms of public safety. Includes fire, includes EMT, includes police officers. It includes those individuals who, when there is an emergency of any kind, we ask them to respond rapidly and effectively. I know that at least since I was mayor, I've been mayor, we've heard a consistent request from our residents and from some members of the governing body that we find ways to incentivize people who are in police, fire, and emergency services in particular to live within the city limits. That we find there is a perception and a consensus that people who are keeping us safe, if they live within the city limits, we feel safer with them here. That's not to denigrate anybody who does a job that is important to our community as a whole. It's simply to say that we're looking at the issue of community health and safety with a particular emphasis on location being a desirable component for our community. I know I've spoken to any number of city residents who say, wouldn't it be great if those police cruisers were parked in my neighborhood rather than in Rio Rancho? Wouldn't it be great if there were a firefighter living in my neighborhood or an emergency response person? I'd feel so much more connected to those people. I would feel they're more connected to me, and their proximity would give me an increased sense of safety and security. It's not a particularly new idea. It's simply something we want to try here. I would also add, we have a shortage of certain kinds of employees, just as the school district has a shortage of instructional people in classrooms. Recently, an anonymous donor provided a $400,000 grant to HomeWise to underwrite home mortgage down payments for educators. It specifically stipulates educators. Doesn't say anything bad about people who are providing janitorial services or driving the school buses or administering the schools. It says we want to focus on educators in the classroom, because in the school district, their critical shortage is educators. In the city of Santa Fe, our critical shortage is health and safety service providers with direct response to emergencies. So identifying those as a priority reflects the reality of our lives. Those people are valued and scarce. And if we can incentivize them living within our city limits, so they're close at hand and in our neighborhoods, I think we enhance the safety and security of our community.
Thank you for that. Was there any discussion about potentially, I mean, we heard of, and I was looking for it real quick, but what was being referred to as the Verde Fund, which looks like they're really only in the early stages of that, and maybe this fiscal year only looking at maybe spending 50,000 of that for an assessment. Did anybody look at moving an additional 450,000 then into the down payment assistance program and opening it up to more people, and then next year funding the other fund once it's ready to go?
I can answer that, Counselor. These are really different, fundamentally different priorities. One, it's not really the Verdi Fund. The Verdi Fund was, I think Councilwoman Villarreal referenced, was something that former mayor and friend Mayor Gonzalez pioneered to try to use city funds to underwrite efforts with particularly youth-related programs to provide job and sustainability at the same time, training for young people to get work with installing solar or retrofitting homes, combining employment with sustainability. The program that Neil Denton was describing is a green financing mechanism so that individuals who live in our community who are of lesser means than our wealthy residents, people in the lower end of our income levels, will have as much opportunity to solarize and make their homes more energy conserving as people with more means. So it's more of a loan fund to provide energy savings, which will produce a more sustainable Santa Fe and a more equitable Santa Fe when it comes to trying to make us a green city. And that amount of money, if you remember the math that Neil took us through, the 29 or so, I think it's 29, it might be the homes that they've been able to do as a pilot so far, it might be 37, I can't remember, 29 or 37. They were on average able to provide subsidies of $5,000 per home to give them the wherewithal to solarize their residences. He also mentioned a 3-to-1 leverage. So we're talking about somewhere between 100 and 300 homes that would be able to be solarized by the green financing mechanism. And that speaks to our sustainability agenda. The funding to support mortgage reduction is really more of a combination of public health and safety with livable neighborhoods and an attempt to make sure that we are bringing people into our neighborhoods and allowing them to afford to live here, given our high housing costs, who are the people who are providing the most significant interventions when it comes to public safety and security. So the short answer is we were looking at two very different priorities, one around our sustainability agenda and equity for lower income residents, and the other around public safety and affordable housing for residents, to encourage people to live in the city in which they are providing security, which is, as the city manager said, in this climate and environment today across the country, I think one of our highest priorities.
Okay, but the sustainability agenda, from what we heard from Neil, is still only, they're going to use 50,000 this first year to do a contract to figure out how they're going to get it done.
No, I don't. I beg to differ, Counselor. I think what Neil said was that the steps include starting with a contract with an outside vendor that set these funding mechanisms up in cities around the country to give us the path forward that would then allow the creation of a nonprofit or the contracting with a nonprofit that would triple, if they could, our commitment, and the work would begin as soon as that blueprint was produced. It's not a year-long effort to produce that $50,000 study. That's simply the first step.
So you're assuring us that that blueprint will be done within the fiscal year?
Well, I think from what I have been told by both Neil and by Beth Beloff, who is the person who has given us the benefit of her effort, having led the sustainability agenda effort under Mayor Gonzalez and now the coalition, that drafting that report, drafting that $50,000 roadmap is a matter of months, not a full year's worth of work. I'm happy to double check that with Ms. Beloff and get back to you with the timetable, because she has actually done this kind of effort as a private citizen and can help us scope out the work. But I'm happy to give you a timetable, Counselor, that is more of an assurance.
Sure, because if it's going to take a year again, do we want to put 500,000 into that fund when we can do that after the blueprint is done? And I'm in favor of the program. Just want to make sure that we're using the money we have now wisely, which again, I hope would be that we could provide more down payment assurance for all our employees that want to live here. I think the people that pick up trash are just as important to the functioning of the city as public safety is. So, and we've seen in other cities where trash services have gone on strike, and it has led to many issues, many health problems, and a lot of other issues. So I think we need to try to work towards that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. I'm pitch hitting for a few minutes for Councilor Romero Worth. Councilor Villarreal, did you have questions?
Thank you, Madam
Please
Chair.
go ahead.
Thank you. I'll start off with the health plan. I think it was inevitable that we would have to have an increase just by the sheer nature of how this plan is structured and this particular provider. And again, I'll reiterate my desire to have us look at other possibilities when we put out another bid for other potential providers to see and compare what that looks like for us. I know we haven't done it in a while, in a few years, so I'm looking forward to that, to kind of compare what's out there and what's best for our city employees in terms of medical plans. And then the other thing I wanted to just verify, we had talked about this last time. Did we clarify about that third party entity as it relates to proactive health providers like acupuncturists and medical massage practitioners? There's this third entity that's coming into the works with our insurance provider, and I'm wondering if you all got any more information about that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we did. Let me get the documentation. So essentially, it's the name of the third-party entity is called American Specialty Health, otherwise known as ASH. And this, the reasons, when talking with Cigna, the reasons for using ASH, there's 4 categories: quality, there's evidence-based national standards for coverage guidelines, ensuring customers that only medically appropriate services are performed, while also creating consistent coverage practices. The protection protects customers from inappropriate services to eliminate unnecessary out-of-pocket costs and time associated with unnecessary services, as well as fraud and abuse. The third category is care, to ensure customers receive quality medically necessary care that is consistent with their benefits plan. And access is the last one, an expanded network of quality, cost-effective, credentialed providers that provide quality service coverage for urban, suburban, and rural customers. Right now, Cigna partners with ASH for acupuncture since September of 2021, but is not in place for chiropractic services at this time.
And so we don't have any control over ASH as a third party and even the use of them?
No, if Cigna is our provider and they utilize them for control and all the reasons that they provided to me, then that if that's what they opt to, we don't have control over that.
Okay. I think
I think that a lot of, when we were talking about this, we had a meeting specifically about this, and there are several other entities that use it. I think 35 other states utilize ASH. And so it's something that's pretty widespread and I guess common in this area.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to have this third party, another bureaucratic level for practitioners to be able to do their work. And I know we don't have any control over it, but it's just like one other layer of getting proactive support for our medical providers and services for us to, try to do things that are actually helpful instead of getting to a point where you need medical services because you're exacerbating and not getting holistic support or any of these medical services. But you know how I feel about this. I always have I just think the whole system is broken for our health providers, health system. So I will move on to that. Thank you for providing us the information. I'll move on to some of the other pieces here. And before I go there, I'm sorry, I jumped in right away, but I do want to recognize you all, the staff and team from HR and all of the contributions you make that we don't necessarily get to interact with on a daily basis. It's been hard to hold a lot of the COVID work. We don't see that behind the scenes, but tracking that was so important. I think it really just set a good precedent for us, but also a structure that I don't think other places had. I mean, hearing from other jurisdictions, they did not have anything in place that we had as it relates to COVID response. So I applaud all of you for taking that on and taking it seriously. And all the other aspects that we're trying to do to support our health of our employees in so many ways. Alvin keeps telling me, you're a city employee, you could go get, you can also go to the, what was it? The, blanking what it was, the help me out.
Cooking event.
The cooking event. I was like, oh, that sounds so great. And he's like, well, you can do that too. And I'm like, I know Councilor Lindell was able to do that. I'm still planning on trying to make it sometime. So at some point, I'll be able to make some of these fun things that we provide for our staff. So thank you all for that. I'm sorry I didn't start that way. I was just like in budget mode here. So thank you. Director Salazar, can you tell us more about the HR analyst position that you all are implementing and what that person will be responsible for?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, thank you for that question. I say we have a small but mighty team. The volume of work that we manage every day is a lot, and the number of recruitments, labor relation issues that we encounter, FMLA, we just don't have the capacity. It was a real learning experience with the whole COVID new duties that got attached to everyone's job, the on-call, evenings, weekends, everything under the sun. So I think that we really need to build the capacity in HR. The ideas for this position would be to provide additional support to the departments while they're hiring new employees, processing HR actions, helping with any FMLA cases and the like. So it's really complementing the team that we already have, but providing them a little more support in that area.
Okay, great. And what was the funding for that position again?
It's general fund, and it's we're requesting $31 an hour.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question that I was referring to earlier with IT was the Tyler Human Capital Management module upgrade, which we know is necessary and it plays into both HR and finance. So there is a line on the budget that says that you need a functional subject matter expert to assist with this upgrade. So I was curious what that meant. And then I don't know if how this is different from the IT request that they already budgeted or asked about. Your request is 500K. So I think IT was 2.5. So is this a separate pot of money for the same program or the same module?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's a really good question. So the functional subject matter expert is going to be hopefully someone who has who has experience with Tyler, but also has and Tyler upgrades, but someone who also has experience in the HR world and how we set up codes, and because everything that we set up will affect eventually the payroll codes and making sure that we're in compliance with federal and state laws. So that's what that means. As far as it being different or the same from Director Gonzalez's budget, it is the same upgrade, but I believe that the instruction was that HR and finance would be looking for their own subject matter experts for the upgrade, and HR has less modules than finance, so that's why the difference is there as far as the requested funding. But it's my understanding that the two departments will be responsible for finding their own subject matter experts, and that was the reason for the request.
I think we have both directors, Gonzalez and McCoy, wanting to add. So if we can allow them that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor, that's a really great question. We do have 3 different allocations that we are considering one-time allocations for FY23, the 2.4 million in Director Gonzalez's IT budget, the $500,000 in the Human Resources budget, and $1 million in the Finance Department budget. This upgrade of our financial and HR platforms is one of the most critical projects, as was the implementation in FY20. The original implementation was north of about $8 million. And here we are looking for about $4 million for the significant upgrade. I believe, as Director Gonzalez mentioned, we are currently on version 11 and we'll be upgrading about 10 versions to a more recent platform, which will be excellent. It'll provide additional capabilities, additional functions, really to be able to work with more capabilities that have been developed over the last decade. So as staff, we're really looking forward to this upgrade. We do have lessons learned from the first time that we did this massive implementation. The first time that we did this, we had staff working both on day-to-day activities as well as doing testing, working through the roles, working through the workflows, just to name a few of additional responsibilities. Our staff, what we have talked about with our staff internally in finance in each of the divisions, is there will be 1 point person from each of the divisions to be assigned to the modules. But the way we're going to use these additional functional subject matter experts is really to do a lot of the testing. These are experts in their fields, potentially folks that have retired, for example, from the labs or from Los Alamos County or even the state, that have used either a Tyler product or something similar, but are also subject matter experts, for example, in procurement or in accounts receivable. And they would be able to be additional supplemental functional experts. That way our team can continue to focus on the day-to-day activities that are so important, running payroll for 1,200 employees, being able to continue the progress that Mr. Bejarano's team is making to have an on-time audit. So I hope that adds some additional insight into the functional expertise. And I'll go ahead and ask Director Gonzalez to describe the 2.4 million that's embedded in the IT budget, which is largely for technical support and other training.
And if I can just interject here too, and I think Director Gonzalez mentioned this, it's critical that we upgrade, because the old versions are no longer going to be supported. So I just want to underscore that and make sure we all heard. I believe you mentioned that. So sorry.
I think the main question for me is there's different pots of money for the upgrade, and the assurance I wanted to have is to make sure that everybody was communicating with each other, and that there's a concerted effort that is not obviously duplicating efforts, but also that you're listening to ITT and taking direction from them in each of these modules. So maybe you can elaborate on that, Director Gonzalez.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, as Director McCoy said, we're 10 generations behind. This is going to be an extremely heavy lift with an aggressive timeline. Lessons learned from last implementation, it's unrealistic to expect city staff to do their daily functions, their daily tasks, and able to do quality assurance testing in this new environment. And that's what we call SMEs, subject matter experts, will be doing. So once IT and this implementation team stands up this new version, brings the data over, configures it, then a department has to go in there and test it, make sure it's working like it's working in the old version. We learned from last time, our staff doesn't have the time to do that. So these SMEs will be coming in, be paired up with city staff, do a quality assurance testing, and then with that city staff, do quality acceptance. They'll accept it and say, at the end of the day, what we do from A to Z on Monday in version 11.3 works in version 19.3. So that's our plan. We hear what you're saying about who's in charge. Director Salazar, lessons learned from last time, made a comment. It was too many generals, not enough foot soldiers. So this implementation team, we're going to have what we call a program manager, and everything reports to that program manager. That program manager reports to the stakeholders. The stakeholders will be Director McCoy, myself, Director Salazar, the city manager, and the mayor.
Excellent. That's what I wanted to hear. I just want to make sure there's coordination, and it sounds like they are. And when I hear subject matter experts, I just assumed it was IT. Sorry, I just thought it was our staff. So I hear you about needing more support outside of our city expertise. Okay,
So,
what's that?
So Madam Chair, Councilor Varela, yeah, so these SMEs they'll be financial subject matter experts for assisting finance. They'll be human resource subject matter experts. We will have our subject matter experts on the IT side.
Perfect. I'll make a note of that. All right. And then thank you for that. The next question I had was about class and comp study. So did the process get delayed that so we already approved funding last time for an updated class and comp. So did that get delayed due to COVID, or where are we at with that last allocation of funding?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, no, we're not delayed. So right now we're in the first phase of the class and comp study, which is to evaluate the classifications and the job descriptions. So that will be completed, we're anticipating by June 30th. And then the next phase is going to be the actual review of pay and comparing to other like organizations. And we anticipate that to be completed by December of 2022. So that's on target with the collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME and what we had set out to do last fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you. And then this additional 140,000 for class and comp, how is that going to be utilized since we'd already budgeted for the contract?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, so the first portion will be paid with this fiscal year's money. And then of course, because it'll overlap into next fiscal year, the 140 will be to finish out the study on the compensation piece, since it overlaps the fiscal year.
The compensation piece. Okay. Mm-hmm. Was that first portion that we budgeted last year, was it also 140? I was trying to remember if it was 150 or.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I believe I'll go back and check, but I believe it was 200 $300,000. We were able to do the first piece at a lower rate than that. So we are actually going to spend less than what we had originally anticipated.
Okay, good. Let's see. We did talk about the incentivizing earlier. Councilor Rivera talked a little bit about it. And I guess I was just curious overall how you came up with the amounts, the retention amount, and then the signing bonus amount. How did you decide on those amounts? The general ones, the one that's 2,000, and what was the other one, 1,000?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, in looking at other retention incentives across the board throughout the country, they're typically anywhere from 500 to I've seen some up to 3,000. And so we were just comparing with other organizations. I think some local governmental agencies have also done the same. So trying to be competitive with the like organizations.
Good. Okay. So the biggest one, I guess the elephant in the room for me, and I guess it was for Councilor Rivera, was down payment assistance. And we already heard from the mayor about the justification about why they thought that our first responders should be the ones that get that. And I thought a lot about that, and I think it's a both and. I still have this both and perspective that yes, we want a program that promotes safety, that have our officers here to be able to have a representation and live among the community and in the neighborhoods. And then I also think about how other employees are also just as important and have that, the essential worker status too. And I think about yeah, we promote safety, but we also promote pride in our city. And so I think about if we had more people that were able to live here from Parks Division, which is by the way, one of the other short-staffed departments that also has, you had talked about short-staffed in PD, but that's also another one. I think finance is another one. You could actually say it in a few departments. But I think about parks, people that work in parks, to have pride in their parks and what they do every day because they live here and they get to use them every day. And then I think about streets and public works. That's also promoting safety too, because we want safe streets. So they would also be, it would be good to have people that work in that department that would be able to see their fruits of their labor. I mean, you could also say that about HR, like people that you hire, people that you could even potentially recruit because you live and work among them if you live in the city of Santa Fe. So I am not okay with this down payment assistance just going to first responders. I think we have different ways that all our employees are first responders in different aspects of their work. And so I just think we need to think about this holistically. And I think the funding source, Councilor Rivera brought up the idea about the green bank, the money. Actually, I brought that up to him. I'm glad he brought it up to you all. But I did look at the budget for that. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't support it. There's the $50K that's hiring a consultant to build a business plan. Then I asked staff what else the funding source would be used for. And that clean energy fund would be startup funds to actually create a 2-year contract with an organization to coordinate the fund. So that's like $300K right there to coordinate. And then only $150,000 would be used to invest in actual city households. So I'm of the mindset yes, we need to put a plan together. Yes, we need to create the infrastructure and also support funding sources from it. But I actually think a portion of that should go towards our down payment assistance program and make it larger so that every city employee is eligible. And I guess my question to HR is about the administration of the down payment assistance, not just in its current form, but if we did one, whatever that looked like, if it was for all employees, who would administer those monies?
Madam Chair, Councillor Villarreal, I think that we would have to flesh that out. We would have to develop policies, insurance with federal requirements as far as compensation for employees. So I think that all needs to be fleshed out still.
Okay, I think we probably aren't have the infrastructure to do that. We'd probably have to use a nonprofit that already does that, which is, I kept thinking about HomeWise, which the director and I had talked about this a long time ago, and I think other counselors had talked to him about down payment assistance. I mean, we already do that anyway for city staff. Sorry, not city staff, but city residents. So I'm just curious. I think there's infrastructure already in place that we can use that would be easy to be able to transfer funding sources to do this. I just think it needs to be a larger down payment assistance program with everybody eligible, obviously within a certain range of what your median area income would be. So, and that's standard. So I don't think it pertains exactly to your budget approval in this case, but I won't be supporting the entire budget plan if we cannot get this tied down so that we can look at down payment assistance, even if it's a pilot project, to look at it so that all employees of a certain income range would be able to be eligible. So we can try this out. So I don't know how much you all will be leading that. Who would be leading the down payment assistance program? Is that HR?
Let me see if I can, let me offer some thoughts. First, Councilwoman, I also spoke with Michael Lofton about this, and I think you're on the right track in terms of finding existing instruments or organizations that can be our partner. It is instructive that the $400,000 that a anonymous philanthropist provided for down payment assistance for classroom educators specifically is being routed through HomeWise. So I think there is every reason to believe that just like the green funding source, or the green financing instrument would involve a third party entity, so would this. And I think the next step, assuming we get approval, is to convene with our internal team around housing and finance, bringing together and outside individuals to have a team of experts, whether it's Alexandra Ladd, Rich Brown, Mike Lofton, Ed Romero, and others, to say what have we seen in other communities and what's the most efficient way to get money into the hands of the people who we're trying to provide this incentive to. I would say that, one of the reasons to limit the applicability is that the more people who are included, the lower the amount of assistance will be. And we all know we have significant housing issues here in Santa Fe. We have expensive housing, and what might be a good ceiling in another community for assistance. And I know that our HR director has done some research on programs in other parts of the country where they have a limit of how much assistance each individual could have that would probably not help a lot of people in Santa Fe, because every community is different and our housing costs are significantly higher than some other parts of America. So one other reason, in addition to what I believe is a legitimate prioritization of first responders and public safety people, just like the school district or Mike Lofton's gift will be prioritizing people who are actually in the classroom where we have a shortage. The other reason is to make sure we have enough money so the assistance actually benefits people in a substantial way. Otherwise, it's a gesture, but it's not really going to yield any results. So yes to what you said about partnerships, yes to a SWAT team to get together after budget is approved, and actually work out the implementation plan.
Well, I think there's other resources for down payment assistance. I see it all the time as I chair the Community Development Commission, and there's other funding sources through CDBG and our Affordable Housing Trust Fund that help to support those efforts. If we're focused on our city, I still think it would be valuable to open it up. There would be obviously criteria. Not everybody would be eligible, but I think that having to start a pilot project that looks at all possibilities, because of the fact that all our staff are impacted by lack of affordable housing. If we even talk to HR, I'm curious how many of you actually live in the city. Hopefully you do, but it's challenging to see that. So it's challenging to see that people that get to work, that work here, don't get to enjoy living in the city that they work. So I'll leave it at that, because we'll be picking it up in probably, I don't know which department will end up bringing this up again, but I don't think this falls directly in line, or maybe you could let me know, Director Salazar, approving your budget is not necessarily approving the down payment assistance program in its current form. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I guess I don't understand your question. Are you asking if we can peel that out?
Well, I'd like to separate that out so that we can decide what that can look like for, in whatever form that we can hopefully come to an agreement on with the governing body. But I don't want it to affect approval of your budget. So what I'm asking is the down payment assistance, if we can remove that for a fuller conversation and it doesn't necessarily affect approval of your budget. And I don't know if you can answer that, but I'm trying to figure that out.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I don't know if Director McCoy, or I believe I saw Aaron McSherry on the call, that if there's more questions, of course, I would prefer that we move forward with the remaining items. There's a lot to prepare for with benefit stuff and all the things that are being recommended, but I will defer that to either our city attorney or finance director.
If I can, I believe the money to do this is currently in your budget. So if we approve your budget, we are basically saying the finance committee approves of using this money, this pot of money, to do this thing targeted at these people.
Or we can change it and say
Well,
the amount of money can be used for down payment assistance and to be further decided who's eligible.
yes, that would have to be an amendment to this budget.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there's any more questions.
There are other questions when you're finished.
And one more question was just to make sure that the allocations for the pay increase, all of those have to go through collective bargaining, a process. And I know that AFSCME brought up that in the language in the budget book, it didn't say that there was going to be a collective bargaining process for the allocation of the increase, the percentage increase. So just making sure that that will be resolved in the collective bargaining process as well, even though it doesn't say it in the budget book.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, yes, absolutely. That allocation will definitely be brought to the negotiation table for bargaining, and they can determine, and we will exchange proposals based on what works for them based on that budget allocation.
Okay. And I'm just curious if, I don't know if this would be John Blair's shop, or maybe you all have already tried this, but have you all considered a professional mediator for these negotiations?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, yes, actually, we have talked about the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services. I think In my experience, I've worked very closely with this organization and specifically with AFSCME, not this local, but a different local, and it worked very well. I think we had reached out early on, like right before COVID, and then COVID hit, but we can certainly talk to AFSCME and see if they're interested in that, because I think that's a really good way to help move things along.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe that would be best to have a neutral party to try to resolve this, since it's been a couple years now that you all haven't come to a place of resolution. So
I want to make sure that everyone understands that even though under New Mexico state law, even though two parties don't get to an agreement, there's what's called the evergreen clause. So whatever is in the existing collective bargaining agreement will continue in its full force until a successor agreement is approved. So all the benefits are still in place in accordance with the last collective bargaining agreement.
okay, which made me think of the other thing that I was going to ask you about was the language provision that you all have. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name. Help me out here. Where you get
bilingual pay.
Bilingual pay. I know that that's in place right now for AFSCME. And was there going to be an increase for PD or some other department that was a higher incentive?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I'm not aware of any increases. Any increases would have to go through the collective bargaining process. And I believe PD has that already locked into their contract, but any changes would have to go through the negotiation process.
And their bilingual pay incentive is the same. It hasn't changed.
Their bilingual pay is, it hasn't changed from what they had in previous contracts. It is different than AFSCME.
Got it. Can you send me information about the difference in a little bit more detail? I know you sent me something last year, but as it relates to PD as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Okay, it is 3 o'clock. We do have some more questions and we still have one more budget to get through. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question.
Okay.
Because pretty much everything's been asked. Ms. Salazar, talk to us a little bit about our reserves in our health fund, or our lack of reserves.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell. That's a really good question. The last couple of years, we have used reserves in order to not increase medical premiums. I believe that I don't have those numbers with me, but we can certainly get them to you. But we had utilized those reserve funds over the course of the last couple of years, and we were down to, I believe, I really want to get you the number, but it was under, definitely under $1 million for sure. And we also have to consider the IBNR numbers, the incurred but not billed yet. So we have to subtract that from that number, but we will go ahead and get you the actual figures. Working with the accounting team and finance, we can get you those numbers.
Okay. You know, it doesn't have probably great immediacy, but I think that it's something that we need to get on our radar, because I know that we're blowing through those reserves at a pretty fast rate. And I think to look at what those balances are, maybe compared to what the last, maybe what, you don't even need to do each year of 5 years, but maybe what they were 5 years ago. And I mean, we're not going in a great direction on that. And there's numerous reasons for it, but I think it's something that we need to have, that we're going to need to think about, because we're blowing through those pretty fast, particularly from where we were, say, 5 or 7 years ago. So I'm not trying to be an alarmist about this, but it's something that we need to plan for in the future, and to start talking about it now is probably a good idea. So thank you to you, Ms. Salazar, and that entire group that works up there. Holy cow, you process a lot of, used to be, we would say you process a lot of paper there, but boy, you go through a lot of data up there, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and you're all very, very appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for letting me ask that question. And
Go ahead.
Chair, did you have questions?
Well, we have Councilor Rivera's hand is up. I do have two quick questions.
Okay. I was going to make a motion. I'll wait.
Well, we could put a motion on the table.
I'll make a motion to approve this budget.
Is there a second? I'll second for the purposes of discussion. I still do have a couple questions. Mr. Burley, you had a slide that said the medical plan's history in years FY20, 21, and 22. And, you know, basically in the last 2 years, there have been no changes to contributions. And I guess to just piggyback on Councilor Lindell, what that means, though, is because we didn't ask for an increase in contribution, it didn't mean that the costs didn't go up. It meant that we used our reserves to pay so that there was no increase in contribution. Correct?
Madam Chair, that's exactly right. Because of COVID, the last couple of years, the decision has been made because of the other hardships on employees not to implement contribution increases as well.
Yeah, and I just think sometimes maybe we don't understand what happens there, right? Is that means then that the city pays the city's share and what the employee's share would have been had we increased the contribution. So we took care of the whole thing, and we've done that 2 years in a row, and that leads to Councilor Lindell's concern that we have eaten into our reserves at a level that we may want to start bringing those back up, because we may hit another bump in the road and we may want to help people again. And if we don't bring the reserves up when things are good, we won't have that capability. Correct?
Madam Chair, that's exactly correct. Any shortfall is 100% funded by the city.
Okay, and I just think, I don't know if your slides, instead of saying no contribution, I think it might be good to, you know, indicate that it's not that there wasn't a cost, and it's not that it wasn't picked up. There was an increase, and it was shouldered, and it was shouldered by the city on behalf of the employees. Okay, and then one other question about this down payment assistance fund. I'm just wondering, you know, I agree with the emphasis on our first responders. I think that's the area where we're seeing a need to do more, particularly with police, because we need more police and because the environment has become much more competitive for attracting and retaining police. The state made some changes. That is meaning that, you know, if you're looking to go into that field, you might decide that being a state police officer is the better way to go, because they just increased compensation. And I think we've got to continue to be competitive, continue to offer a range of things that helps attract police to our city to ensure the public safety. And so what I'm wondering, I also understand, you know, I'm hearing from the several committee members that, you know, it would be nice to be able to expand to other types of employees. And I'm just wondering if one solution might be, and we've talked about the fact that, you know, we are going to be revisiting and continuing to work on budget adjustments as we go forward in this year, as we see what we hope will be continued robust revenues. If we might add this expansion maybe down the road as we see, what our revenues do. And it seems as though they may continue, and that we get started with what we have here, and that we, put the emphasis where it is currently, because that's really where we need. And to the mayor's point, that we make sure that we actually provide a meaningful level of assistance to actually get what we want, which is first responders living in our neighborhoods in the city limits. And so I guess I throw that out as another possibility, that we sort of make a note that this is something we would like to see down the road as we continue to budget in the course of the next fiscal year. So we do have a motion and a second, and those are all the questions I have. Councilor Rivera has his hands up, and then we can have the mayor has his hand up. Mayor, were you, is your comment overall or to points I was making?
They're points you're making, but in deference to the committee member, Councilor Rivera, I will wait my turn.
Okay, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Salazar, with regards to the fund balances, you had said that the union had agreed to everything that had been discussed with them, but typically the fund balances has been a large issue, or an issue of not contention, but I guess knowledge for them to have before moving forward with any types of increases. So they haven't been given the fund balances either?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we have not gone through the fund balances the last few Benefits Advisory Committee meetings. We will begin building those into the monthly Aon reports in collaboration with the accounting section of the finance department. And those will be the presentations to include that additional data moving forward for the Benefits Advisory Committee meetings.
So you want us to approve the budget really before everyone knows what the fund balances are, including us?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I think that I don't know if Ricky is on the call. I think we have the 2021 amount, and we can ask him for that. But again, looking at the way that the fund has progressed over the last couple of years, and the fact that we haven't adjusted premiums to account for the increases of claims coming in, based on that information alone, that's what's causing the increase for the premium rates on as a whole, to ensure that we're covering the actual numbers, the claims that we pay versus the city's contributions and the employees' contributions are actual numbers, and those are tracked every single month. And so definitely our claims surpass the revenues that we're bringing in. And that has been the case for the last, I want to say, at least 3 years, Todd. And so that is the reasoning for the increase. And of course, because we haven't raised premiums in the last couple of years, that's eating into the reserve balance.
Thanks, Ms. Salazar. I don't doubt you. I would just like to know what those fund balances are. And you said Mr. Bejarano may have them?
Madam Chair, Councilor, if I may, I have from Mr. Bejarano's research, I do have the FY21 ending balance, which is an unaudited number at this point because our team is still working on those with the external auditors, as I updated council last night. But for fiscal year ending FY21, the ending balance was 2.9 million, and that does not include the IBNR, which we generally carry an IBNR of 1.8 million. IBNR, as Director Salazar mentioned earlier, is incurred but not reported. This is a balance that we carry over to make sure we have sufficient funding as we cross from one fiscal year into the next fiscal year to cover any claims that come in for those few months. So that IBNR that is generally carried is 1.8 million. So discounting the IBNR, we're down to about $1 million in reserves.
Okay, and that IBNR is funded by everyone in the plan, right? The city as well as employees?
IBNR, yes, IBNR, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, IBNR, it's incurred expenses. But yes, the revenues into the fund are funded by both the employer and employee share that build the reserves.
And Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, if I may, the 1.1 million claims coming in on a monthly, just for 1 month, on average surpass $1 million. So that would carry us maybe for 1 month of claims. And so just to give you a picture of what that might look like.
Madam Chair, another important addition is those numbers were as of fiscal year ending FY21. Last year at this time, the governing body did vote to have an infusion of, I believe, about 3 million into the fund to be able to shore up the fund. But as Director Salazar has mentioned and Todd has reviewed with us, the expenses are outpacing the revenues. So even though there was a one time out of reserves infusion in subsidy, if you will, into the health and dental fund, we do see that the trends continue, and Councilor Lindell will be happy to provide the information that you requested. A comparison to where we were at 5 years ago, we see that same trend primarily because expenses are outpacing our revenue. So we rely on our reserves to get us through for a few years, and then if the revenue isn't adjusted upward, we're going to be at the same pace as medical inflation or the costs that are driving the increases to claims, and we will be at the same point that we were at ending fiscal year 21, where we're going to need to come back to the council for an infusion into the fund or to increase the revenue into the fund, both on the employer side and the employee side.
Okay, and then just one follow-up question to the signing bonuses. $300,000 budget to cover those. How long has PD been getting the $15,000 incentive?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I want to say it's been about two plus years, but I will also contact the police chief on that to get the exact date of when they started that.
And how much of that 300,000 is contributed to their employees, PD's incentives?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I believe that the 15,000, they've been funding that through their own budget, and that is not part of the 300,000. Yes.
Okay, and in the last 2+ years, how many more officers do we have than we did previously?
I can certainly get that data for you, and I can send it out to you once I get that for you.
Okay.
Counselor, I can't give you the hard number, but I know we just had a lateral transfer ceremony last week. We have another one coming up next week, and I believe thanks to this incentive program over the course of COVID, we were able to bring in something like 7 or 8 other lateral transfers, a number from the county sheriff's office. I think it's made a significant improvement. It's helped us significantly, particularly remembering that for one entire year, the police academy was shut down due to COVID. So we were completely shut out of new cadets. So it became a significant way we could buttress our police force with people coming from outside. It has to be in the neighborhood of 9 or 10 at a minimum, but I absolutely agree with HR Director Salazar. We can get you the exact number. But I have attended those. I can tell you, having attended those ceremonies, they've made a big difference just in the ranks, even though we continue to have serious vacancy rate issues in police.
And so what is that vacancy rate? Do we know, Ms. Salazar, Director Salazar?
Yes, let me get that for you. Hold on. So as of March 31st, the police sworn position vacancy rate is 21%.
And how many officers is that?
33. And again, this is as of March 31st.
Right. And was it last year that we approved the other pretty significant raise for them?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I believe that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So if you can get me the numbers on where we were before that, before the 2 year, the raise we gave them 2 years ago, and compare that to where we are now.
I can do that.
That would be great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Just one other question. What level should our reserves be at, going back to the healthcare? So you're saying there's about 1.1 million after we allow for the IBNR.
Madam,
what's best practices?
Madam Chair, I think it's going to depend on what the governing body feels comfortable with. Obviously, as an HR director, I think that the more we can set aside in reserves, the better. And in the event that we do have another pandemic or some situation where we don't want to increase premiums, I would say at least 6 months worth of expenses. I know that in doing my research prior to me coming to the city, this has been a topic of discussion at the governing body level. At what rate should it be? And in my research, it had been talked about maybe 5 million. I know that ties up budget to set aside, but I do think that that's a conservative approach to help employees when we might really need it. So I would say my recommendation would be at least get to a point where you're at 6 months worth of expenses.
And so when you said we had expenses about $1 million a month?
I can give
we're
the
looking,
average. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So based on what you're saying, we're looking at, to your point, 5 million would be maybe on the low end, 6 million would be more like in line with the actual numbers.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. Mayor, Councilor Rivera, if you can take your hand down. And Mayor, you had wanted to make comments. I don't know if you still do or.
Well, I did want to piggyback on Councilor Rivera's question because I think the data, having the data is important. If the police vacancy rate is 21%, what's our overall vacancy rate for the rest of the city for our other departments? Do you have any numbers for those?
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, let me get that for you. So the total vacancy rate that we have citywide right now is 26% overall.
So 26% for the whole city, 21% for the police department.
Yes.
And I'm sure you could itemize the different departments where we have serious vacancies. Now, my impression is that in order to address that over time, you've taken steps to change compensation to try to attract more people to fill hard to fill jobs, basically incentivizing those positions, yes?
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, yes, we've had to do this across the board because of the competitiveness with certain classifications. For example, we've worked with AFSCME to get approval, get their approval to increase salaries for convention specialists and lead convention specialists, our streets employees, transit employees, our land use inspectors. So this was outside of any class and comp study or an across the board. It was utilizing existing budget, but finding a way to increase salaries to retain the employees that we currently have and recruit employees to fill the vacant positions. This also happened for environmental service maintenance workers. So we are constantly looking at that, looking at our vacancy rates, looking at our turnover rates and the reason why people are leaving. And so oftentimes we have to increase those salaries out of the normal cycle of a class and comp study if it's necessary.
So I just raised that because I think we've had 2 days of discussion about, is it fair to incentivize some positions over others or some departments over others, and to add either incentives or compensation adjustments to attract hard to find employees. And I think the practice is a fairly normal one. It's not, there's nothing unusual about it. When we have difficult to fill positions, we do what we can to fill them. And the HR team keeps a finger on that pulse and works with directors to create adjustments to what the market is telling us. I think the market is telling us, as the chair said, that in the area of police and public health and safety, it's very difficult to fill these positions. We would be adding more ARU units if it were easy to fill those slots. We all know they work well. They're a great augmentation to our standard approach to public safety. Filling those positions is a challenge. Filling the positions in police across the state, across the country, is probably the hardest thing to do. And so I don't think we're doing anything unusual to say that we can prioritize those without in any way demeaning or diminishing the importance of the other people who work so hard for the city. I don't believe the logic that says if we incentivize policing, we're disincentivizing anything else. We try to give everybody a good salary. What was our compensation last year? Because Councilor Rivera mentioned the large increase for the police. That was in my, I believe, first full year as mayor. We had an average 27% for the police, but last year our offer was 4%, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And it included, as the chair mentioned, we picked up all the healthcare costs for our employees. And even then we experimented with that $2,000 retention incentive, which we hope to include in this budget so that it will immediately be payable as soon as the new fiscal year begins. So the effort is to treat all of our employees well and with respect. An 8% pay increase for across the board, except for police, which is budgeted at 16. The 4% is twice what we did last year. And it's a, I don't know that looking over past budgets, I've seen an 8% pay increase in recent times in the city of Santa Fe. Have you, Director Salazar?
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, no, it's been a long time since I've seen anything above really 4%. In my experience here and at another local government as well.
So I guess, Madam Chair, I think you make a good point. We can begin a pilot project that addresses our most significant needs and where we need to be the most competitive, because that's what the market is telling us. And we can evaluate that pilot project. That's why it's a pilot project. You see how well it works. you gauge the response and the effectiveness. And if it proves effective and there's more money, we can then look at ways to expand it. I do believe in the general principle that says that if people who work for the city can live in the city, that's an outcome we would like to encourage. I also believe that you start where you need to start. And in this case, the objective information tells us that the hardest positions to fill, where there's the greatest competition and the greatest sense of concern in our neighborhoods and downtown and in our community, is with public health and safety and the speed, swiftness, and responsiveness of those city employees in those particular jobs. So I think the conversation is really constructive. I think your advice, Madam Chair, to look at the project as it evolves is a good idea. I also think it makes sense, as Director Salazar has said, you provide incentives where you're having the hardest time filling the most critical jobs. Thank
Right,
you.
Mayor, we're going to have to move on. And I do see Councilwoman Villarreal's hand up one more time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification, by approving this budget, is this also agreeing to the percentage for pay increase, the 8% and then the 16% for PD? Or does that
Director,
go alongside?
Director McCoy, do you want to answer that question?
Madam Chair, Councilor, the what is contained within the HR department's budget is an allocation in a collective bargaining reserve equivalent to an 8% increase subject to collective bargaining. And that is, again, held aside as a reserve in one lump sum total, and that is for the AFSCME union. The police department allocation for the 16%, equivalent of 16%, is held within the police department budget, and that budget we will be hearing next Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rivera.
Thanks. Just one last follow-up, and then I promise to be quiet. Director Salazar, regarding what the mayor said about, and then those other hard to fill positions that you talked about earlier, were you successful in hiring those with the incentives and the increases that you made and ultimately gave?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I think that the inspector classification, I believe, still has a vacancy or two, but it did help retain, definitely helped retain transit drivers and streets maintenance workers. And we were able to recruit more convention specialists and then retain some of the ones that were getting job offers from local hotels, since they significantly increased their salary. So I believe that those increases did work.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we do need to move on. We have a motion and a second to approve this budget. Can we get a roll call?
Councilor Villarreal,
No.
Councilor Rivera,
No.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, we're gonna move on. And we'll figure out what we need to do about this. Because we still have finance to go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to the Finance Department, I'd like to introduce the team that we have with you here today. We do have our Budget Officer, Andy Hawkins, and his team, Lawrence Lovato, and Maria Grego has joined us this year to assist us since the Budget Division is so short-staffed. She has come on as a temporary employee to assist us through this time. So we're appreciative to her for doing that. Joining us today as well, we have Alexis Lotero. She is the Assistant Finance Director. We have Ricky Bejarano, our Accounting Officer. We have Bradley Flitch, our in-house CFA and Planning and Investment Officer. And we have Fran Dunaway, our Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Santa Fe. Thank you to the entire team for taking the time. I know you all are busy with your various different really important responsibilities. We hope to highlight that as we go through the different budget slides. So Maria, if you will. And we also have Carolyn Roybal joining us today. She is our dedicated admin manager in our department. You all are familiar with her as you see her every 2 weeks in our finance committee meetings.
Hello.
Okay, next slide, please. Today, we'll just give you an overview of the finance department budget. We have a total budget for FY23 of 33 million. This is an increase both when compared to the current fiscal year FY22 and pre-pandemic levels. The department budget does include an 8% salary increase for both non-union and exempt employees. We have a total of 58 positions and 20 vacant positions currently. That's a vacancy rate of 34%. This is the highest vacancy rate in the entire city out of all the departments. Next slide, please. First, we'll review with you the admin budget. This total budget is 2.8 million. The major increases, as we discussed previously, is a $1 million one-time cost for these functional subject matter experts to assist with the Munis financial and the payroll module update in January of next year. We also have, when those two platforms are updated, we will have to update all of our policies and procedures. So there's an additional 200,000 built into this budget. Again, it's a one-time cost to be able to support updating policies and procedures because the platform, as Director Gonzalez mentioned, will be jumping ahead about 10 versions, so an entire decade worth of changes. We're really looking forward to. We additionally wanted to call out that we have 80,000 in this budget for training for our finance staff and 15,000 in dues for memberships to professional governmental finance organizations for our finance staff as well. This is really key, important part as we continue to hire in a very qualified certified staff. For example, Fran as a CPO, she's continuing to hire in CPOs in her department, or Brad as is a CFA, or Ricky as a CPA. They are continuing to add additional staff where we need to continue with our continuing education, as well as continuing training for all of our staff across all divisions. Next slide, please. The Accounting and Financial Services division is one of our larger divisions. This total budget is 4.2 million. Here, this is combined the accounting, accounts payable, grants management, and payroll divisions in FY23. Next slide, please. The FY23 proposed budget for the budget division does contain the transfers for the departments that we have been discussing earlier, everything from our debt service obligations to our subsidies, debt and capital costs for the different funds, Midtown, Transit, Rail Yard. So this contains salaries and budgets for our budget staff, but in addition to that are transfers throughout the city. Next slide, please. The Fleet Management Division is also a part of the finance department. Their budget totals about 1.5 million. Part of this is assessed out to other departments, as we discussed earlier in answering Councilor Rivera's questions. The main highlights here is we have about 250,000 for repairs and maintenance of the city fleet citywide, not only vehicles, but also some of our heavy equipment. We have close to 300,000 for auto parts and tires, and close to 20,000 for employee training. This is a key critical department, internal service department, that is the backbone to a lot of our operations across the city. We're very excited. Our fleet manager has been vacant. We're in the last portions of the hiring process to hire in our new fleet manager into this division. Next slide, please. The Central Purchasing Office, every single contract and PO goes through Fran's shop. This is quite a significant increase in an investment over the course of the last 4 years. Fran has done an excellent job at providing a vision for the office to create a contracts and a procurement section within the central purchasing office. So every single contract and every single PO is reviewed by someone in her staff, a very qualified, capable staff that have a wide variety of expertise. So we have been able to add capacity to this department over the course of the last few fiscal years. And we're very grateful to Fran for providing her vision for this area. Next slide, please. The Treasury and Investment Department totals 1.3 million for fiscal year 23 recommendation. Few highlights here, the activities in the Treasury and Investment Division manages all revenues and outgoing payments and oversight to all AR functions and the cashier office here at City Hall and all bank activities. The Brad also manages the city's investments of over 300 million and our debt portfolio of about 235 million. For the highlights of this budget for proposal for FY23 is an additional 150,000 increase in the Treasury Department or Division's budget to build out a self-service tax portal for all of our lodgers tax collections, unlike the gross receipts tax that go to the Taxation and Revenue Department. Lodgers tax all comes into our City Hall cashier's service. And the idea behind building out the self-service tax portal is to make that tax collection process much easier and quicker for our taxpayers. We also have a $60,000 pilot program for a revenue maximization contract. We know that we leave revenue on the table and we would like to hire in a consultant to come in to assist us to collect the revenue in various different areas to make sure we're maximizing the revenue collections, whether it's tax collection, lodgers tax as an example, or in other fees or fines or in other areas. Next slide, please. The next budget is our risk management division, totaling 5.6 million. The risk management division is responsible for managing all of our claims throughout the city. The increase that we see here for a little under 450,000 is associated with our general liability claims and our third-party administration, as well as claims for fleet and physical damage. There's about 300,000 in contracted services, including everything from our insurance broker services, claims administration, and a citywide risk assessment. Next slide, please. And that brings us to the total of 3.3 million for the entire department. With that, Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask Maria to stop sharing the PowerPoint and for all of our managers to stand for questions for the committee members.
Great. And I didn't know if you wanted to do a quick introduction of your team, that being the Finance Committee, and these are the folks we see on a regular basis. But, to the extent we have members of the public tuning in for these budget hearings, maybe a quick introduction would be something valuable.
Madam Chair, we already covered the introduction of all of our staff. We have many more staff that does support the half a dozen or so members that we have here, and we're very grateful to all of the hard work and effort that they put in. They work nights and weekends. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we do have one of the highest vacancy rates. I think this doesn't come as news, particularly to the Finance Committee. So we're very appreciative to this particular team that's seen us through these last few years that we've been short-staffed.
It's true. We did introduce them at the beginning of these hearings 2 days ago, but in case you were just turning in today and not, 2 days ago, and maybe we've all forgotten. But anyway, all right, we'll move on in the interest of time. Questions from the committee. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We actually just did an intro at the beginning of this presentation. So good to see you all. Thanks for sticking with us. Quick questions. The 200,000 to fund an update to finance policies and procedures. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Madam Chair,
I took a bio break, so I might have missed that. So,
Madam Chair, Councilor, thank you for the question. Yes, that is considered a one-time expense that is in conjunction with the Munis financial and payroll module in the human capital management system upgrade that we're going to be doing. They're in making the change from the version 11, which we're on now, up 10 versions, 10 steps, if you will, into the future. We do anticipate having to revise policies and procedures across the board. When it comes to policies, for example, Brad has brought forward an update in the past to the investment or debt policies. And I believe Fran brought forward a change to the procurement policy, both within the last few years. Those things do come to council. So if there are any updates to policies, those will be reviewed by the city. We'll send those to the city attorney's office to review, and then we'll bring them to council for approval. The bulk of this work.
Is that a contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor, yes. And it's technical writing, if you will. It's we talked about functional subject matter experts. These really are folks that are going to need to be experts in their fields to be able to understand what best practices are. The bulk of that work will go into updating the operating procedures, the standard SOPs, we call them standard operating procedures, to be able to walk someone through from start to finish in the modules in the new Tyler Munis version.
Great, thank you, thank you. And then can you say a little bit more about that 414,000 for general liability claims?
Yes, Madam Chair. Brad, do you want to jump in?
Thank you, Director McCoy, Chairman, Councilor Villarreal. That is primarily an expected increase in the premiums that are going to be paid, that we're in the process of renewing all the city's insurance policies at this point in time. These are forecasted in speaking with our insurance broker that we will see an increase in our premiums this year. Not just the city's experience, but just general experience of all insurers over the last year.
Okay, and it's not based on claims that we've had to process and the increases?
Our reserves have been very strong for the last few years for both workers' comp and general liability. So it's not for claims, it is for premium increases.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that distinction. For the self-service tax portal, I think that's a great idea, because you said that it currently goes through cashiers and this would be a portal they could access online. So is there someone that would need to administer then or maintain that portal? And do we have that person already in place?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I'll let Brad share the good news about that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we are on the verge of hiring a lodger's tax administrator, and we're going to have our final interview with them tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to get them on board here shortly. This is going to be this is really enabled by the new Munis upgrade and the implementation of a receivable system. And what we want to do is once that receivable system is in place, unlike the utility division that does have a receivable system and bills its customers, lodger's tax is a self-reported tax.
Right.
And so we really don't have a receivable system we don't have a receivable system at city other than utilities. So now we're going to be able to have them come in, create their own basically invoice, which is their tax return, and be able to pay it, much like what I do for the city paying government gross receipts tax at TRD. So this is going to be, the new Munis system, integration with the fiscal agent, and making life massively easier for both the lodger's tax payers as well as staff. Right now, we receiving somewhere around 200 to 300 paper tax returns a month. And this will eliminate that.
That's great. I think that's a great idea. Is the lodger's tax administrator also going to be the regulator to follow up with those entities that haven't paid?
That is correct.
Okay. Instead of Randall doing it. I always thought that was interesting. So I think that's good. There's a separate person to do that. One more question, the 60,000 for revenue maximization. You said that was a consultant, correct?
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes.
Okay. Missing out on revenue sources within our systems. Within
Madam
our
Chair,
current section.
Counselor Rivera, yes. This is an effort very similar to what we just discussed with lodger's tax collection. We don't always have one person like we will with the lodger's tax administrator to monitor each of the revenue sources. This is something I'm very excited about. This is something we've talked about for the last few years, and now we feel we have the capacity to deploy this as a pilot program. Ideally, the cost of the revenue generated by understanding what's left on the table and being able to collect that will cover the 60,000 expense.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Other questions from the committee? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to approve.
Move. Second.
Motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? Seeing none, can we get a roll call, please?
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor O'Meara Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have moved through the agenda. We will pick up on Tuesday at 1 o'clock and move into the second week of these budget hearings. Thank everybody for the work that we've done to date. We've got more to do and more to circle back to. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you. I just want to make sure what the items that we've asked or requested for additional information, is that being tracked on a paper, on a sheet saying like what each of us have asked over the days this week?
Looks like Director McCoy is nodding yes and flashing that list on camera.
Madam Chair, I do have a master list of all the follow-up that we do owe the committee. It's similar to prior years. It'll be in a memo format, ideally coming in waves to you. So as soon as we get a few things, we'll go ahead and pass that information on to not only the Finance Committee, but the entire governing body as well. So everyone has the same information at hand.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we will see everybody next week. Have a good holiday weekend, and thank you for your work to date. We'll see you next week. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.